All right, so I suppose I'll start with the conclusion. In this essay, I would like to present the thesis that is that grandpa style is better than the gongfu brewing of tea. Now, if you're not deeply into tea, you won't really understand what these two terms mean. So I will quickly go over the definitions of these two forms of tea preparation, just for those who are not enlightened to the minor details. Gong fu brewing is a form of brewing when you usually have a pretty small pot or a gaiwan vessel for preparing tea, where you put the tea into that vessel, you put hot water into that vessel, you steep for a little while, and then you pour that resulting infusion into either another vessel or the final cup, which also is a vessel that you will finally drink out of. In contrast to this method, you also have what is been coined by a popular tea blogger, Marcelin, who runs the Tea Addict Journal, as grandpa style. He coined the term from the fact that that's how his grandpa prepared tea, and one of his earliest memories, a little bit of tea lore for you there. So what does grandpa style entail? You take a mug or a vessel of some sorts, you put in tea leaves, and you put in hot water, and that is basically it. You wait for the tea leaves to brew, and you sip out of that same vessel, right? Now, if you ever chose to engage in the sort of online Western tea culture that sort of came from the East, you will often see Gong Fu style as the preferable way of brewing. If I had to come up with a hypothesis of why that is, it's because it is more complicated, right? You have to have a vessel, then you have to have either a cup or a gongdabe, which is a mediary vessel you can use. It looks cool. It looks something that you don't see in Western cultures. Usually people will make fun of you for having a very small teapot because they're used to Western teapots who are, from a half a liter to a full liter, while Gong Fu style pots, especially in the West, are usually below 200 milliliters. Usually people who would say even sub 100 milliliters. So very small vessels. However, I do not feel like it's a better way of preparing tea. I think we mistake complexity for quality in this case, as generally online people. And I will present a couple of reasons why I think that grandpa style brewing is not only a different form, right? Because a lot of bloggers will present, you can also brew grandpa style. It's a different way of brewing, which, I mean, it is quite different. But I will argue that it's actually better if you have the choice of you're alone in your house and you want to have tea. I believe that you should brew it grandpa style. So what is my reasoning? Why am I going against the consensus of having a single Gong Fu session? First of all, I don't like to argue with the naturalistic fallacy usually, or appeal to tradition. However, it is important for us to sort of understand or to consider the fact that traditionally the grandpa style is much closer to what most people drank tea in the cultures that tea developed in, and what most people, for example in China, still continue to drink tea in this particular form. The gaiwan, the vessel I mentioned earlier, being a lidded cup, was first invented to be drank out of as in the form of grandpa style, not in the form of Gong Fu necessarily. That is a development that came later on. That then changed. Usually the narrative around that is that the Taiwanese sort of that the tea culture adapted in Taiwan and then went back into the mainland. And if you look at different, if you may argue with me here, right? If I may create an opponent in my head for the Socratic dialogue, you may say, all right, a lot of people put on a Taylor Swift album. That doesn't mean it's necessarily the same thing as someone, studying music, studying classical music on a, academic level. That's not the same thing necessarily. Just because most people do it isn't a good argument for why we should do it as and consider it a higher form of enjoyment. And I would absolutely agree with you there. However, if you look at different appreciation cultures where people look at tea at very high levels and very much focus on the tea and very much enjoy tea to a deep level, even in Taiwan, in the place of, sort of where I would place the origin of Gong Fu Cha, the Gong Fu style of preparation of tea, if you look at the competitions there for their tea, their oolongs, you will see that they prepare them much more akin to grandpa style rather than Gong Fu style. They will have bowls, which will be then, the tea will be put into them, and hot water will be put into them, and they will have tasting spoons, and that is much more akin to grandpa styles than Gong Fu. You may say, okay, competitions style tea isn't necessarily something you meant to enjoy. It's for assessing some of the qualities, but that is still something I feel like that is important to mention about grandpa style that Gong Fu simply lacks, is the fact that it forces you to engage with every aspect of the tea, right? The Gong Fu style of brewing sort of allows you to pick and choose, right? Is the tea too strong for you? Is it too bitter? Do you don't like this? The mouthfeel, you can have it weaker. If it's too weak, you can brew it for longer. It sort of allows you to pick and choose, right? On a chemical level, certain things only start seeping into the actual infusion after a certain amount of time or at certain temperatures, while grandpa style forces you to engage with all of this, and I would argue that it produces, therefore, a more complex cup of tea, right? All these elements that essentially Gong Fu is. It's like taking in, science methodology, it's like a cross-sectional study. It's taking a part of the tea at a particular point in time in the infusion, and it's just taking that out of the whole experience, while grandpa style is like a longitudinal sample. You see the whole thing go through, and all of those chemicals, all of those things that contribute to the taste are present in the cup of grandpa style brewed tea. And I think with enough practice, you can distinguish it, even if you have harsher or bitterer tastes that may seem overpowering at first. I do believe that you can sort of separate them out, and therefore you not only have a cross section, you have a more holistic view of the tea, which is why I would argue it's actually better than Gong Fu for tea appreciation. There is more complexity. You brew. Ironically, the more simpler form of tea preparation is the simpler one. The sort of complexity comes out of simplicity in that sense, in this particular example. And one of the other things that we have to consider, and what is often mentioned about grandpa style, is its convenience. Gong Fu setups can go from pretty simple to pretty complex. Really depends on how you want to do it. But there is no simpler way of brewing than grandpa style. No way more convenient, and that is usually the settings of where people choose to brew grandpa style. Is in a setting where they can't brew Gong Fu for whatever reason. However, why am I mentioning this? Okay, this is a big advantage of grandpa style, but it is also great for keeping up a tea habit. This might seem ridiculous, but if you really want to have a Gong Fu session I feel like you almost, some teas, if you drink pu'er, for example, it almost feels like to get the full experience, right? To get enough cross sections so you sort of understand the tea in its entirety can take, up to 3 hours, even longer, depending on the tea. While I feel like if you brew a cup of a cup of grandpa style, you can and you still refill it with hot water. It still can last you a bit. Doesn't also teas of longevity will last you longer there, which is also a way you can adjust if it's too bitter or something. So it's not even that you're losing that much control over Gongfu style. You can still drink a little bit and dilute it, and then choose to drink it earlier or sooner depending on how the infusion tastes to you. Right, so you don't even lose that control, that perceived control you have in Gongfu style. Now, in Gongfu, it might be easier to go from infusion to infusion, choosing to change the water temperature. But I think you can still, there's still, technique in brewing grandpa style that you can learn, that you can develop, that you can understand your own preferences. I also wanted to mention that I don't think Gongfu, the Gongfu style of brewing was ever developed as a solid, or it wasn't developed. It wasn't meant to be a solitary activity. You weren't meant to do it as an individual. We can see this with the Gongdabe, the fairness cup, right? This is the vessel you pour the tea out of the teacup into, and then you split it into smaller teacups so everyone has the same strength of tea. This was developed because you would normally drink with many people, and I would say that Gongfu preparations of tea is preferable when you have people around, but I think that's the only time I would choose Gongfu over grandpa style. That's the only time where that would be my preference, in a tea shop setting where you're pouring to multiple people, or the tea festival setting, because we don't usually, it's hard to have people to come over for Gongfu in the West. So that is the only thing that I would say Gongfu has better, and it's sort of a perversion to me to drink Gongfu in a Gongfu matter on your own. Because that's simply, and again, I don't want to argue from tradition, but there is, I think, something very valuable about separating your individual sessions you have of a tea versus group sessions. And I think the separations of only drinking Gongfu when you're with other people and only drinking grandpa style when you're by yourself does. Because, one of the powers of tea and caffeine in general is the fact that it associates, the flavors, the experiences you have alongside with it, right? It's habituating. So that even if you were to drink Gongfu, separating it from individual sessions to group sessions, I think can draw a lot of, you can get a lot of benefit from that. Now, it's also, grandpa style brewing is also far easier to introduce to beginners. You don't have to mess around with a gaiwan. You don't have to burn your fingers. You don't have to get an expensive teapot, even though cheap teapots can do the job just fine. All you need is a mug. If you want to go really technical on it, you can get a lidded mug with a lid, which will help you to keeps up the warmth. But I don't think it's necessary. All you need is a mug, a tea, and hot water. And if I were to end this in any way, I would encourage you, if it's an appropriate hour to drink tea, to get a mug, get some tea leaves, get some hot water, and sit with the tea for a while and sort of accept it as it is. Analyze it, sure, but just chill with it.